It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Mr. Corey Hawkins to Happy Sad Confused. Big fan of your work, man. Thanks for taking the time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. Good to be with you, man.
So, look, when you hire Corey Hawkins, you get a lot. You get the song and dance man. You get Shakespeare. There's a big skill set to call upon, and it's all demonstrated in the last year of work that we've seen. Congratulations on not just like the body of work, but just the diverse kind of work we've seen this past year. You must take like a special pride in like you've shown many facets of what you can do in the last year to people.
Well, I feel like part of it is just trying to prove to myself that I can do it. Like, a lot of it is, especially with the singing and the dancing. I was nervous. I mean, a lot of people didn't know that I sang and didn't know that I, could move. And then they put me on the side of a building in a film and said, "Do your best, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers." And so, but it's a joy to like go from that to, the stage, and then go from that to, doing a play on film, or an adaptation of a play on film, with Macbeth. And I just, for me, I appreciate the sort of being able to stretch, man, and just do different stuff. And so again, surprise myself.
Yeah.
Because that's like, I'm the biggest critic, up in my head. So, and just keep doing stuff I love.
I never trust the folks that aren't self-critical. Those are the ones, those are the scary ones that like, oh yeah, I got this. Totally. No.
Yeah. The people who are like, that's it. Yeah, it's no problem. I'm like, okay.
But not
you gotta
only,
be nervous.
Yeah. And not only that though, but like, just like hanging with the heavyweights in every respect, whether it's Lin-Manuel Miranda and John Chu, who's exceptional at that kind of filmmaking, and Denzel and Francis and Joel. I mean, this is it, you're spoiling yourself. You're setting the bar high for 2022 and beyond, which I guess is what you want to do, but it's gonna be a tough act to follow.
That's what I tell you. I told my reps that too. I was like, my thing is like, again, it's just finding projects and people that I love and people that I enjoy being around. And another thing is like, not only am I working with these legends, but the people that are in front of me, the Denzels and the Francis and the Joels, like, and Lynn, John Chu, these are people who put themselves outside of their comfort zones purposefully. Right. And to sort of see, and especially with Denzel and Francis and Joel, they don't have to do what they're doing. They could literally put it down and hang it up and would still be considered, in my opinion, some of the greatest artists of our time.
Yeah, Denzel can do 12 more Equalizer films and just retire on that. Like, he has nothing like
exactly. But D won't do that. Like, no. That's the crazy thing, is that he will continue, and he talks to me about this all the time, is like working with directors and artists that you trust. You have to trust the pilot. You have to. Every time we get on the plane, you implicitly trust the pilot. You don't think about it. And so and he trusts that the pilot is going to challenge him to go to even further heights, in his career. And so that's what it was for me too. It was like, I got to trust these creatives who I'm putting myself in the room with, and decide if I want to spend not only time working together, but then you got to talk about the film, and you want to be proud of it. So yeah,
it's a great rule of thumb that you kind of allude to, and this comes up a lot in conversations with actors and filmmakers over the years. Is like, I always look back to like the folks that I kind of grew up with, like like the big movie star of my childhood among many was like Tom Cruise. And if you look at Tom Cruise and you look at and you kind of study his career, he associated himself with like Scorsese and Oliver Stone, and just like in that prime period went after filmmakers. And even like a decade or 15 years later, look at what Leo's done. Leo, Scorsese, and like the top, like, just surround yourself with smart people and they're going to make you look great. If you've got the chops, just surround yourself with people that have the chops. So yeah, people who are going to literally, who are going to challenge you. Like, that's the thing. It's like, and then people that you just like being around, where there's a shorthand. And that's the great thing with Joel, is that he keeps the same people around him, same actors, same, troupe. And that's sort of what it's about, is sort of finding your troupe, and finding the people who speak the same language and want the same things out of the art that you're creating that you want, So since we have the luxury of time, let's go back a little bit to your beginnings. In your family, are you the unicorn? Are you the latest in a line of people that pursued the arts? Like where do you fit into the scheme of things?
I'm a bit of a, I want to say unicorn because I'm doing the thing. But I would say my family is a very dramatic.
Whether they're being paid for it or not, they're dramatic.
Whether they're being paid for it or not, they'll give you 100%.
Okay.
Always, and the good and the bad, of course, with every family. And I love them. I mean, my grandmother, she has a lot of brothers and sisters, and they all grew up singing, and so I grew up hearing, these. They'd be the trio over here and the quartet over here, and at holidays they'd be singing battles and with gospel music or whatever that was. So I grew up with creative people around me, but also my grandfather was a pragmatic, like he was very, it still is very, not strict, but I would say, he was the tough one. You know what I mean? He reminded me that, yeah, that's all well and good, but get your butt to school and
right.
Get your grades up and all of that kind of stuff.
So it sounds like you're definitely, like we all are, a product of both sides in a way. Yeah. Yes. I mean, you've got obviously the artistic chops and interest, but there is a pragmatism. Anybody that goes to Juilliard is not like, just like, they're serious about it. They're like, they've got a plan.
I mean, I hope so. Shit. I mean, sorry, I'm not gonna. No, you can. I hope so. I'm like, you spend that much time and energy pouring into something that, when you graduate may not pour back into you, yeah. And it's a huge risk and gamble to take. And, it definitely paid off for me. And I'm not talking about just, success in that sense, but paid off for me in terms of like, I found a passion and I found being able to express myself in ways that, that feeds me and hopefully, feed someone else if that art speaks to them,
I think the first time I think I actually saw you was on stage. Actually, I saw the Romeo and Juliet production here in New York. I saw Orlando Bloom come out on stage on a motorcycle.
On a motorcycle with fire and sand and birds flying around. It was an interesting production.
Yes, it was. But I guess my point I was trying to make was like, you love theater, clearly. Like this, you're a creature of the theater. You've done a lot of it in your career. And I'm curious, like, was that something that you came to as you kind of found your path? Or was that like, were you exposed to theater growing up? Or did it only kind of come after you started to study it and realize like, this is a home for me?
I think I knew what it was, but we didn't grow up going to the theater and I grew up in DC, and there was a lot of good theater in Washington, DC, even at the time, and a lot of great theater artists who came out of there at that time. But I wasn't, that just wasn't where my focus was. I just didn't know about it. I wasn't exposed to it. I didn't know Shakespeare. I didn't know the classics. By the time I went to high school, I did go to an arts high school. That's when I really started to understand what it was. But performing, again, was still sort of at school. It was Duke Ellington, that huge, that performing arts mecca, and I was surrounded with a lot of people who looked like me. So not only were we artists at the time doing the thing, but we were artists who came from the same parts of the city and different parts of the area, and we all looked the same, so we were all in it together. And classics for us wasn't necessarily Chekhov or Molière or, O'Neill or Shakespeare. It was, everything from Hansberry to even Dick Gregory. Like we were like just that far into sort of things that that just sort of spoke to us and who we were. So it wasn't until I left then and I was like, oh wait, it even took a year after. I didn't go straight out of high school to Juilliard. So it took a year after to sort of fall into it and say, you know what, maybe I can make this my life. Maybe I can follow this path and see where it takes me.
So what was the initial, prior to Juilliard, as I understand it, you did go out to LA, and was the plan just like, I'm going to see if I can do pilots or do whatever, or just kind of like, did you have like a distinct plan, or was it sort of just haphazard?
Well, that was kind of my sneaky plan, but I ended up going to college because of course my grandfather was like, I want you to be one of the first, the first graduate in this of college, And so I was like, okay, well then I'm gonna go to a college in Los Angeles, and that's a little more free and liberal, and and so that was my thing, and I ended up realizing quickly that wasn't where my path was supposed to lead me for several reasons, and I also just think I was too young, too far away from home to really appreciate what that place and at the time was giving me. And I told everybody I was just crazy. I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna just audition for Juilliard and put all my eggs in one basket and go for it, because that's how much I believe in myself and in my talent. And I'm gonna spend the money to fly up and go do this and audition and and put it out there. And when you do that, the universe really does, and I believe this, like the universe shapes around what your goals are, and you just got to continue pushing that forward.
That must be as pivotal, and as I think about it, as you describe that, as pivotal a moment in your life as any getting any gig is getting the letter or call that you're in Juilliard. Because I mean, people know. I mean, people that listen to this podcast probably know like just how exclusive we're talking about, and like just how I've talked to many an actor, whether it's like Chastain or Oscar Isaac or Anthony Mackie. I mean, it's
Adam Driver.
Adam Driver. It's where you want to be. Do you remember getting in? Was it a moment? Was it a validation?
I remember the spot I was standing in the parking lot. I remember I was in the parking lot of the college that I was at, and I didn't have a car. I was just out there walking around because I missed the call, and then I was like, oh God, I gotta get away because I don't want to be around people when I find out that I didn't get in.
Right.
And I got the call, and I remember all of the people who told, how you hear people, oh, everyone told you wouldn't do it. People literally told me that I wasn't going to get in because it is a very challenging program. It's a hard program. Thousands and thousands of kids audition to get into that program, and they only accepted. My year was the first time they only accept 18. At first it was bigger, and then they cut the number down. And so that was even more of like the reason I was like, well, take a shot. And I remember that. I remember it vividly. I saw the path. There were like two parallel paths. And I was like, this is the path. And if I stay on this path, that's okay. That's okay. But I know if I get into Juilliard, that's gonna, And so thinking back on it, I'm just, had I not taken that chance, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. That's like, I wouldn't be where I am. Oh, maybe I would. And it'd just be a different version of that. But, talk about fate and everything that sort of aligns.
Did it suit you? Did Juilliard suit you? Because again, it's a rigorous program. It's not for everybody.
It isn't. And it wasn't my very first year. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Me and a few of my classmates who were in my class at the time, we just did not like first year at all. and it was not because of our teachers. It was just the work, the kind of work. I mean, we were grown. We thought we were grown adults, rolling around on floors, right, pretending to be animals. Like I was like, what am I doing? Like, what is going on? And when you look back on it, it was that ultimately ended up changing for me. I think after my second year, I realized how all of that specificity and craziness and quirkiness plays a role in the rest of the training, and right, how you can always call on that, even subconsciously, unconsciously, whatever that is. And there was a new level of appreciation for that part of training. And just the idea of training too. It's like, what are we working towards? Is it, what are we doing here?
Well, not to mention, I know like they also, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't want you doing work like outside of Juilliard during the program, and you must just be chomping at the bit. You're in New York, you're in the heart of it all. You're like, I got into Juilliard, I got the stuff, I got the raw material. Let me out of the bench.
Well, that's so right, man. You sort of start to see, like, you're seeing all these great shows, all these incredible plays. You're rubbing shoulders with the greats. I mean, I remember in that time, in my first year, meeting Cicely Tyson, and like just being able to be surrounded with all of these legends, and from Felicia Rashad, and the August Wilson vets. And I just remember, man, like I was like, oh, I'm chomping at the bit, but also first years reminded me that maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, because once you get into the program, you realize, and you never audition for any roles while you're there too. They just cast you, which was weird. I was like, okay, sure, go with the program, because they want to push you outside of things that you feel right for.
Right.
Again, pushing you out your comfort zone. And so that was great for me. And then, yeah, just being able to, you realize all the things that you don't know. And so it sort of puts the brakes on it a little bit, the outside world. And then you go, okay, I see the process. I see what's ahead. I see okay, and now I'm ready to graduate and step into freshman year of life,
So you get to freshman year of life, you've got this degree, you've got the degree under your belt. Still a couple years before Compton, the big break, Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
And in that time frame, you do Broadway, do Romeo and Juliet, you do, I believe you do the Liam Neeson film, you do the bit in Iron Man 3. Yeah. So you're working. Like, where are you at in your head? Are you up for big things? Are you kind of not even getting in the room for the big stuff yet, or what?
No, I knew the casting directors in New York. That's the other thing, is like knowing casting directors and just, becoming fans of theirs and then becoming fans of yours. And that's the great part about being in New York. Right. So there was that. And then also there was just a lot of off-Broadway work. And the great part about Juilliard is that we knew they bring in a lot of directors from the outside in New York who want to work with Juilliard students or who want to get experience. And those directors and writers who we work with are out in the world. I'm talking Sam Gold, who I work with on, in Juilliard. And, I wasn't thinking much of it, but I realized the genius that was there. Talking Katori Hall, you know what I mean? And Hurt Village. That was one of my first plays out of school, having workshopped it at Juilliard. And so, just hitting the boards, and then also, still bagging groceries at the grocery store and trying to like pay the rent and living in a $350 a month apartment, which was really a 5-bedroom, felt like a frat house with rotating characters. And $350 a month in the middle of Harlem. You can imagine what that gets you. So it was, which by the way, I didn't leave it even until after Compton came out. So like, wow. I was like, I'm holding on to this, this little, yeah.
So jumping ahead to Compton, to shooting that one, which it's just clearly just a charmed production, a very special kind of production, a unique production though, for many reasons. Not only you're playing Dre, but Dre is, as I recall, producer on it, very actively involved in it. On set, I would imagine a fair amount. I can't think of many more intimidating ways to shoot a role than to have Dre watching you play him.
Man, he was there every day. And like,
take a break. You can take a day off.
Yeah, I was like, come on, man. Like, but I mean every day, just in terms of from production. That's how much he cared about this story. Him and Cube, even when he wasn't able to be there because he was shooting in Florida. I remember they had him on a computer.
Come on.
With his face, like just sitting there, and he was just watching. And I just was like, man, like mad respect, like to these guys who believe in their legacy and want that story to be told, and told well and told right. And also Dre was literally in the, press at the time for everything he was doing and with Apple and with Beats. And so it was really special, man. Like I was like just blessed to be able to step into that. And prior to that, all the producers were like, well, we got this trained Juilliard actor coming in to, and it's crazy how sometimes, and it wasn't Dre or Cuban, like they believed in me, you know what I mean? They believed in and wanted all of us to succeed. It was the suits, it was everyone else who has opinions about, the boxes that actors should be placed in. And I love being the underdog, so I love being able to be like, okay, I'm gonna show you better than I can tell you,
Did it change things noticeably very quickly after the box office and the critical reception? Did you suddenly find yourself in different kinds of rooms, different kinds of meetings?
I think so. And it's funny how that works. You become an overnight sort of success. I mean, relatively speaking, it is, a few years out of school, it is overnight. Let's not kid myself. But but I look at it as a marathon. And so while it came really quickly, and everything changed. I mean, I was like, I couldn't walk into a room in LA or a restaurant in LA, without, having that sort of thing. And for all of us, we weren't used to it, that fame and that quickly. And it took some grounding, and thankfully, like I said, my friends, my family, we're all very grounded folks, and they'll remind you real quick where you come from. So but it also opened doors, because it allowed me to say a lot of things did start to come in, but I'd always been picky anyway. So
Right.
even when I was living in that $350 a month apartment, I was like, nah, I don't know if I want to go do that series or that. My agents were like, oh my God,
just take the job.
Take the job, but they were along for the ride with me. So they trusted and believed in that we, but being choosy and cautious about the things that you put out into the world, that was important for me at the time. And so I was like, yeah, man, like let's see where this takes us. But I'm not interested in the quick up and up to the top path,
I'm curious. And I mean, it's funny to see just how you've navigated all of this. Cause then I think of, like, I guess the first like big, quote unquote, big scale kind of filmmaking you were a part of was a supporting role in Kong Skull Island, which seems like, and I know some folks that were involved in that, and it sounded like a bit like a production, like a kind of a mad production in some ways, to reflect a little bit of the vibe of the film. Jordan's an interesting character, the filmmaker, I know. I don't know, what are the first recollections when you think of like being halfway around the world shooting something like that with that company of actors?
Well, I got to do it with my brother Jason, who was on Compton with me, so that was fun. Again, like all I remember that process was just fun. It was my first time going overseas. It was my first time really, like, working with Sam Jackson, who's like my uncle, uncle now, Jordan, I enjoyed the process. I mean, we had a great time, but it was a incredibly complicated shoot, but the film ended up being really, really cool. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, but it was something that, again, sometimes it's like the one for me, one for them, whatever that means.
Right.
But really, it was, again, the cast, like Sam Jackson. I'm playing John Goodman's mentee, so I'm rocking with John Goodman, who was great, because I got to talk to him again about working with Joel and on Macbeth.
Sure.
It was just really cool to stay, keeping in contact with him. But like that, John C. Reilly, I mean, Brie Larson, Tom Hiddleston, I mean, it was like, whoa, like here's a troop of people, and the character was really cool and different from what I did in Compton. This like nerdy, intelligent guy who, comes up with the theory, hollow earth theory for Kong. I mean, like for King Kong and Godzilla, like he originated that. Now thinking back on it, I'm like, whoa, that's kind of cool. But at the time it was just fun, and it was a good time. And I did learn, I will say, F. Gary Gray taught us how to be leading men. He gave us, but I know, those were bigger films afterwards, but Compton gave us the confidence that we needed to step into a room full of people who don't look like us and feel comfortable being collaborators in a process. And watching F. Gary Gray work and how he works, his specificity, because I don't think people understand the craft that he put into that film. Sometimes you see a film like Compton, you're like, oh, that's just easy. That comes to them. And it's like, no. That's work and sweat. And so I'm thankful to him for giving me that opportunity, because then I could take that to Kong. I could take that to whatever role after,
He's one of those filmmakers that I think is underrated. He'll get the filmography. You're like, oh, he kind of can do anything. Like he can kind of make any kind of movie.
bro, like anything. And he has, like, that's the thing, the scale, and the people he's worked with. Oh man, it was just, I was like, but anytime I'm in a process, I'm always like, I kind of forget that, like, I'm working with these like incredible people, but that's a comment more on them, because that's the kind of environment they set,
So let's talk a little bit more about the two projects that have come in the last year. We kind of alluded to them and talked a little bit about them already, but let's dive a little deeper, because they're both worthy of it. In the Heights, I thought was extraordinary. John Chu, the filmmaker, has been on the podcast a couple of times, and I'm just such a fan of his work, and clearly just like poured his heart and soul into this. You kind of, it must have been a little bit agonizing. I mean, look, obviously there are bigger issues of the last couple of years we've all dealt with, but you guys were sitting on this for so long. You shot this a couple of years back. You knew it was special. You had to feel that in your heart. Did it feel like anticlimactic by the time it came out, or did it feel cathartic? Like, what do you recall of like finally this past summer releasing it out into the world? And it was so well received, and I know the box office maybe wasn't what everybody wanted, but just give me your postmortem on where In the Heights sits with you now.
Postmortem for me implies that it's sort of, you know,
it's not gone.
I feel like that
long term.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
It lives.
For me, I just like let's analyze the body.
No.
I feel like for me, it's still like, you know, it lives on in such a beautiful way, and it lives on. You know, the fact that you could bring that and then bring it inside people's homes in a time when, you know, we needed that vaccine shot of hope and joy, you know, like we needed to breathe and see people dancing and outside on a screen, even if we're home on a screen watching it. And it came at like such a, you know, we had been sitting on it. It was like a little baby. We were like, and then it, you know, got postponed. But again, nothing trumps what we went through these past 2 years. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the sort of reminder. But the beautiful part again about what we do is like, I got to be a part of something special that represented a culture that even I didn't know much about. Like, and I lived in the Heights at one point, you know, growing up in New York. So I was like, coming up in New York. So I was like, it was special for me to be able to be a part of this and to play, you know, the guy who exists up in the Heights. You know what I mean? Benny exists there and has these dreams and has these goals and falls in love with that culture and wants to pour into it just as much as it poured into him. So and so it's still, for a lot of people who I talked to, and I was just overseas shooting, and people just love the film, and I'm like, oh wow, like it translates overseas just as well. But it was definitely a special process and moment for me. It was an opportunity to kind of like, again, with all the craziness that was going on, to give people a gift. You know, it's like, take a moment and smile, you know, take a moment and look at life and look at where we are, you know. And
and not to mention, I mean, there's so many like kind of show-stopping moments and sweet moments in the film, but you guys kind of get that kind of transcendent, like big leap of a scene between you and Leslie, where, as you alluded to earlier, literally dancing on the side of a building in New York, like something you may have seen in a different kind of a musical, but certainly never in the Heights, never in that neighborhood, never in that environment. Did that feel like a big swing at the moment where you're like, yeah, this is going to work? Or like, wait, what the F am I doing here? John, are you sure this is going to work?
Shout out to John Chu, because I remember in the meeting sitting down and talking about it, and he showed us the pictures, and I was like, I literally went like this, you know, to John, and I'm like, looking at the picture, I'm like, did they draw it wrong? Like, what is happening here? He's like, no, I want to put you and Leslie on the side. Benny and Nina's they're on the side of the building, and it ultimately became our Fred and Ginger, you know, an homage, but also it's their version to people who probably don't even know who Fred and Ginger Rogers are, you know what I mean? But who that's their vision of love and expression of freedom, and it just was beautiful. And then I was like, John, you know, that I was like, that'll be great, but you know, I'm looking forward to see how y'all accomplish that, you know, with the dancers and the stunt people who are gonna be doing it. He was like, nah, bro, that's you and Leslie. Exactly. It's you and Leslie up there. There's no getting away from that one. And we got the bumps and bruises and scrapes to prove it actually happened. And yeah, it was crazy. Like the building, literally, they built this thing that was this way, and then it pulls it, and then we're not wearing wires, and then it pulls down this way, and then it goes flat, and then the camera has to go at the same. It was incredible how they did it, man. And it was one of our last days of shooting too, so it was a special note to kind of end on.
Those days where you're like, oh, I'm in a movie right now. It must be like kind of awesome.
Yeah, it makes you look back and go, okay, I see all that first year stuff at Juilliard. It might pay off.
Rolling around pretending to be a goat now paid off finally.
Exactly. On the side of a exactly.
And now you can say Batgirl. Leslie has succeeded and has become a full-on superhero. So
amazing. As she should. And I knew from the moment we met, it was one of those, it was the first day we met, it was like a storybook sort of thing. Walking down opposite ends of a windy New York street. Aww. And we meet up at the door, and we both put our hands on the door because we were lost, both kind of looking around and get in the elevator, and it's like, wait, are you, and I knew she's just special. And not only that, her talent, it was her first job acting as well too. So to see that freshness and that innocence and just her just open, she's just such an incredible person and soul. And so I was lucky to share the screen with her and my other cast.
So speaking of the Batgirl thing, you can't have a conversation with an actor in 2022 without talking superheroes. Any actor between 18 and 50 has been up for 15 different superhero roles. You were in Iron Man 3.
I was.
Is your eligibility card up for Marvel? Have you asked Marvel, wait, can I get another shot because Navy Op or whoever that guy was is it not enough for me?
It was Navy Op. Wow, it was. Yeah, I mean, I guess Marvel does do the thing where, like, some people appear earlier as different roles, but it has to be the right thing, I love the films. Like, I watch all of the films from DC to Marvel, comic books, all of that kind of stuff. And if it's cool and it actually makes sense, and then there's something to say, then cool. Yeah, but I'm sort of taking my time and just making sure that it's, again, the right thing, because there've been opportunities, and I'm just lucky that I'm on the path that I'm on now. I'll say that.
Is there one, like, franchise or whatever that, like, the child in you would just lose their mind to be a part of? Like, were you?
Like, you mean like in terms of like an action comic or
whatever, whether it's like Harry Potter or a specific comic or James Bond or what is like
it was Mission Impossible for sure. It was Mission Impossible for me.
You belong on the IMF team. That can happen. That's totally can happen.
I want to run the team. Like that's I want the Tom, like, I watched Tom Cruise like get out of any situation, and again, that brilliant music, like, that was so cool growing up, man. Like, I was just like I remember rolling around on the floor oh man, I was a geek nerd over the Mission Impossible sort of franchise, and the fact that it's still going and people still eat it up is a testament to, again, the sort of stardom and the seriousness in which Tom Cruise and that his whole team sort of takes that. I just think is really fresh and really dope still after all this time.
So have you put it out to the team, like, just let them know if they need a guy to hang off the side of a plane?
Yesterday.
Yeah,
I called him. He didn't.
TC?
He's still shooting the 8th and 9th, 10th, 11th.
He's running on a rooftop somewhere, taking the call. Can't talk right now.
I gotta go. Yeah.
It'll happen. We're gonna secret it out into the universe. On a much different aspect. Okay, we talked a little bit about Macbeth. But I mean, the Coen brothers, I know this is Joel's first solo outing, but the Coen brothers are, like, basically my favorite filmmakers. Like, they're the best. And this film, I don't know, for folks that have watched a ton of the Coen brothers work, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, it actually has a lot in common theme-wise to a lot of Joel's work in the past. Talk to me about, I don't know, like, is it all on the page when you kind of get the script version of this Macbeth? Does it say it's in black and white? Does he say it's going to be shot on sound stages? Like, it's a very specific vision, of course.
Yeah. I think that was the first of all, again, creators first, obviously. It's like Joel, Denzel, Francis, done. Like, I will literally be a tree in the background in black and white, whatever you need me to do. Just, I don't even have to be in the movie. Just let me sit in the room and watch the sauce get made. I, you know, it does all have to be on the page. And I think, again, that's what I mean, like in talking about like franchises and all that kind of stuff. Like it has to be on the page, you know what I mean? It's not a windfall. It's not financial for me at this point. It's just, if it makes sense. And that's the beauty about Joel, is he's dutiful in that he's you know, they've always just been disciplined about their writing as a team. And now you have Joel taking this piece of Shakespeare, which is Cohen's before the Cohens existed, you know what I mean? And they've always sort of been in sort of conversation with each other, you know? Like, it's like this particular play, Macbeth, and, you know, the thriller, the sort of noir-esque, the sort of how everything sort of comes back in the end and bites you in the ass, you know, that's sort of, it's all very much in his wheelhouse, and yet just enough to, again, push him outside of his comfort zone. I remember the first time we sat down, Joe was like, you know, you probably know more about this than I do. And I was like, me? You talking about? Nah, I don't know. You know, it's just his trust in easygoing sort of nature was really incredible, and lent itself to the process of making this movie. Like that whole rehearsal process, man, there's just nothing like it. I pinch myself every time thinking about the fact that I'm like, did it really happen? Because the movie feels like a dreamscape, you know? I'm like, did I dream all of this up? You know, it's just such an incredible opportunity as an actor to be able to sit in that room with them.
So when you have a satisfying day at work doing a scene opposite Denzel, I mean, the GOAT, the guy, like the one that we all put on the pedestal, justifiably so. And you've got some intense stuff, needless to say, as Macduff opposite his Macbeth. I don't know, do you sleep particularly well that night? Do you remember like a certain kind of different satisfaction after completing certain scenes with Denzel?
I would say he makes it so easy to he gives you everything you need. Like that's the first thing. Like that's the one thing about him, and that he's generous in his work, and generous in his work in the way that, like, you know, if his character has to put up obstacles, he will do that. You know, he serves the story, and he serves it in a way that makes it so much fun to be opposite him. It makes it, I mean, just even the fight scene at the end. I mean, the way we beat through that, me and Dee didn't actually, because he was working on other parts of the film. It was after the shutdown, COVID, you know, it was a lot. And Dee, in my first time working with him on that fight was that day, right before we started shooting. Wow. So we beat through that thing in the same way you would beat through a scene, in the same way you would beat through just understanding why and the how and the, you know, and then we let it all go, because we knew we trusted the work, the weeks and weeks of rehearsal, to just go in there and allow ourselves. And again, there's no words to sort of say, you know, because, you know, I finished the day, and then you start thinking, you're like, well, did I do this right? Did this go right? And did this? But I have to say, you know, just getting that nod from Denzel after a scene, or you know, being able to say, okay, you know, it's not okay, we did that, we killed it. It's just sort of like, you know, we served the story in the way we had to serve it, and I'll never forget. You know, it's just a classic moment.
I asked you for a, as I've been asking everybody, for a comfort film, and it's from a writer that you referenced earlier. I know you have a bit of a history with a production of this work. Tell me why this one came to mind. What did you choose?
I chose Raisin in the Sun as a film that I find comfort in. The 1961 version. Sidney Poitiers, I mean, Diana Sands, Claudia, you know, you like Ruby Dee. I literally, when you watch this movie, or when I watch this movie, it reminds me that even back then, like our greats, those were our greats, you know. And it just to see, I got the opportunity to play Walter Lee Younger on stage at Juilliard. It was our 4th year production. And prior to that year, they had never done an August Wilson play. So they would just sort of start to sort of turn this, and we were like, we want to do Hansberry. We want to do Lorraine Hansberry. And we fought to get it done. And you know, they were like, yeah, this feels right for your class. And I got to do it with my classmate, Danielle Brooks, you know, who's killing it right now.
Yeah, sure.
And Jakina Calicango, Tyron, Aaron Moten. And for me to see this film translated, I'd see that play translated onto film and to live on forever. It's special. It's one of those things where only on film can you feel the sort of walls closing in on Sidney Poitier. And can you feel that hunger? You feel that desire for all of the characters, Ruby Dee's character as well, Mama's character. And you literally are stuck inside that apartment. So you get it. You get the thing that he's driving. And anybody who has ambition and drive and goal understands that feeling of being stuck and wanting to get on the other side. Macbeth understands that feeling of being stuck and wanting to get on the other side. And oh man, every time I could quote any, I just love that film. And I just love the Black excellence that is on screen for anybody to see at any time. I recommend to people just to take a moment and sit with the youngers, because it just talks about so much, man.
Is there a scene in particular with Sidney Poitier that jumps out at you as just excellence, as just acting excellence?
Ooh, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, man. Oh man, because it also reminds me why, you know, you look at Morgan Freeman, you look at Denzel Washington, you look at, you know, Lawrence Fishburne and you know, you look at Viola, you know, you see the fruits, sure, of all of their labor, you know, in the people who we now call our greats. And I know the moment for me is the very end when Lindner comes back in and he assumes that they're gonna, you know, sell the home and they're not gonna move to the white area. And Sidney is standing there in front of his son, who's looking up lovingly, longingly at his father. And it's giving me chills. And like, and he's literally sitting there and he makes the decision in that moment to go ahead and do the thing that scares him the most, you know, to move into the white neighborhood, to not take the money, you know, integrity. So that's what it reminds me of every time I watch that movie. It's a joy. It really is. It takes me on a roller coaster ride.
It's a great pick. A little context just for the audience, if somehow they're not so familiar with Raisin the Sun, it's from Lorraine Hansberry, who I didn't realize passed very soon after this film, just at the age of 34, I believe, and based on the play in 1959. And yes, this adaptation was in 1961. And you mentioned the amazing cast: Sidney Poitier, Ruby Dee. I think it was Louis Gossett Jr.'s debut film.
Louis Gossett Jr. Oh my goodness, yeah, playing George Murchison. Yes, yeah.
So an excellent pick. Thank you for that, man. And just as we wrap up, I know you have some stuff in the can, some stuff to look forward to. What were you shooting overseas? You mentioned most recently.
I was shooting The Last Voyage of the Demeter for Amblin and Universal, and it basically expands on a very, very small chapter that gets overlooked about the voyage, Dracula's voyage from, you know, to London. And so, but it's an incredible cast. It's an incredible thriller, and again, it's a psychological journey to period piece. It's one of those, again, challenges that I was like, I can't say no to, because it literally is all on the page. And you wouldn't normally think that with a film in this genre, but it gives you everything, man. And you know, so I'm really happy with the work that I know the cast did, and our director, Andre Overdahl, who I've been a fan of for years. Ever since like Troll Hunters.
Right. Yeah.
So to watch his evolution, you know, autobiography of Jane Doe, and then now this film, I think it's going to be really cool. And then we have Color Purple coming up as well.
You haven't shot that yet. That's coming up, right?
No.
Yeah.
We haven't shot that yet. We're about to start production in a month or so.
That's
So
that's a chill, low key kind of project. Not. I mean, whatever.
yeah, I mean, it's just I'm super thankful. I'm working back again with Scott Sanders and Mar Jacobs, my producer from In the Heights. That's the problem. When you let people know you can sing, then all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot. It's like, oh no. I hope I don't mess this up. I got the beautiful, like, I mean, it's just great. Like, Oprah and Spielberg sort of like welcoming me to play Harpo in this version. A musical which has never been done on film. And Alice Walker wrote me a beautiful note about being her Harpo in this. And so I feel the responsibility, the legacy, and the weight of it. And it's going to be a joy. Blitz Bazawule is the director, an incredible mind and a force. And so I'm happy to join up with them.
Amazing, man. Congrats on everything. You're again surrounding yourself with the right people, and you can only do that if you've got the chops, and you clearly do.
Thank you, man.
Big fan of your work, buddy. In the Heights, people should still check out if they haven't had the chance. And The Tragedy of Macbeth. Again, what do you want?
Yeah.
Francis, Denzel, Joe Cohen. What more do you want, people?
What do you want? Like, it's literally, I mean, people have to see this movie, man. It's a cinematic, I honestly think a cinematic masterpiece, and hopefully people will, just a new way of looking at this classic that we all love, and even if you don't know it, it's like music, you feel it, so. And
if you don't lose some sleep from, is it Catherine Hunter? Do I have her name right?
Oh my goodness, yeah. God,
come on.
I love her.
Come on.
Catherine Hunter is just I mean, in the opening beats of her performance, man, is just incredible. This cast is phenomenal.
Good stuff, man. Thanks for the time today. A real pleasure to get to know you, buddy.
Thanks, man. Same with you, man. Appreciate that.